I had 40 seconds before the assassins moved and Park Min-jun's blood painted the bar counter red. My hand trembled just enough to smudge the ink as I scratched 7 words onto the back of a crumpled receipt. The paper felt flimsy, cheap, like it might tear before it reached him. Around me, the bar pulsed with Friday night noise, jazz bleeding through speakers, crystal tumblers clinking against polished mahogany, the low murmur of money and secrets trading places in the dark. Outside, Chicago's February wind rattled the frosted windows. But inside, the air hung thick and humid, smelling of whiskey and expensive cologne. I approached the counter like I was walking toward the edge of a cliff. Park Min-jun sat alone, his back to the exposed brick wall, fingers drumming a slow, lethal rhythm on the wood. He looked like violence wearing a 3-piece suit. Black hair swept back, a leather eye patch over his left eye, the right one dark and calculating as obsidian. His whiskey sat untouched, condensation pooling around the base. Behind him, Yura Lee paced near the coat check, phone pressed to her ear, murmuring something soft and affectionate. Her diamond earrings caught the amber lighting, throwing tiny sparks across her porcelain skin. She looked like a woman planning a wedding. She wasn't. 12 minutes ago, I'd heard her order his execution. Before we begin, click subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more thrilling stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. The wine storage room at Harris and Webb wasn't really a room. It was a converted basement corridor behind the main bar, all concrete and dim Edison bulbs, with floor-to-ceiling racks holding bottles we charged $300 to uncork. I'd gone down to grab a 2009 Barolo for table 12, weaving between shelves of Bordeaux and Napa Reserves, when I heard voices. Female. Sharp. English first. I froze between a row of Chiantis and a stack of Spanish Riojas, my fingers still wrapped around the neck of the bottle I'd been reaching for. He sits at the bar tonight. 2 men at the door. 1 at the back. My Italian was basic at best, enough to pronounce osso buco without embarrassing myself. But I understood tone. And this tone was surgical. You'll give the signal. Then she switched. Korean, fast and clipped, syllables snapping together like bones breaking. I caught fragments, door, signal, and something that sounded like kill. I should have cleared my throat, announced myself, walked away like a professional who minds their own business. Instead, I stood there, heart slamming against my ribs, and kept listening. Sharon appeared at my shoulder, her eyes wide, a finger pressed to her lips. She'd come down the back stairs. She'd heard it too. The voice, Yura's voice, though I didn't know her name yet, dropped into something else. Russian, maybe? Harsh and guttural, every consonant a blade. I couldn't parse the words, but I understood the cadence. This wasn't a conversation. It was a kill order. She switched back to English, her voice honey-smooth now, like she was confirming brunch reservations instead of murder. Clean shot. No witnesses. The bottle in my hand suddenly weighed 50 pounds. Through the gap in the storage racks, I saw her, tall, elegant, in a cream silk blouse that probably cost more than my car. She adjusted her diamond earrings with one hand while holding the phone with the other, her red heels clicking softly against the concrete as she paced. Sharon's hand found my wrist, her grip ice cold. The air in the wine room, kept at a constant 55 degrees, suddenly felt arctic. Yura laughed softly into the phone, said something final in Korean, and ended the call. Her heels echoed up the stairs. Sharon and I stood frozen in the dark, staring at each other, both of us knowing exactly who was sitting upstairs at the bar. Park Min-jun. The man with one eye. The man who never smiled. The man who was about to die. Min-jun unfolded the receipt with the deliberate care of a man defusing a bomb. His visible eye swept across the 7 words. No expression. No reaction. Just that dark, predatory stillness that made every nerve in my body scream to run. He looked up at me. Time collapsed into that single moment, The jazz still playing, glasses still clinking, the Friday night crowd blissfully unaware that death was already seated at the bar. Behind me, I felt Sharon's panic radiating like heat. She stood near the back counter, phone still pressed to her ear, but her left hand gripped the edge of the wood hard enough to turn her knuckles white. She knew. If bullets started flying in a packed bar, collateral didn't discriminate. Is something wrong? Yura's voice cut through the noise like a blade through silk. She'd stopped pacing. Now she stood 10 feet away, phone lowered, those diamond earrings catching the light as she tilted her head. Her expression was concern wrapped in honey, but her eyes were doing mathematics. Calculating distances. Timing. Probabilities. Just bringing fresh napkins, I said, my voice steadier than I had any right to expect. How thoughtful. She smiled, moving closer. Each click of her heels against the hardwood felt like a countdown. Though I'm sure Minjun doesn't need. Yura. Minjun's voice was barely above a whisper, but it stopped her mid-step. He hadn't looked away from me. Where did you say you were calling from earlier? Her pause lasted half a second too long. The gallery, darling. The Sinclair opening, remember? Right. He set the receipt down, smoothed it flat with 2 fingers. What time does it close? 9. Immediate. Confident. Too fast. I saw it register in Minjun's face, not anger, not even surprise. Just a cold, mechanical acknowledgement, like watching a lock tumble into place. He reached for his whiskey glass. Around us, the room shifted. Subtle. Almost imperceptible. But I'd worked bars long enough to read a crowd like sheet music, and suddenly everyone was playing in the wrong key. The 2 men near the entrance, black jackets, buzz cuts, hands in pockets, had repositioned. No longer watching the door. Watching the bar. The man at the back wall in the gray suit had stopped pretending to check his phone. His right hand drifted toward his coat. Sharon saw it too. Our eyes met across the room. Her face had gone pale. Minjun lifted his glass, held it suspended for a moment, then set it down. The sound it made against the wood was soft. Delicate. Deadly. The Sinclair opening was last Friday, he said quietly, still looking at me instead of her. They're closed for renovations. Yura's smile didn't falter, but something behind her eyes went sharp and cold. Minjun, The man at the back wall reached inside his coat. And the world stopped breathing. The gunshot cracked through the bar like a thunderclap in a cathedral. For a split second, no one moved. The jazz kept playing. Someone laughed at a table near the window. Then reality caught up. Glass exploded behind Minjun's head, the bottle of Macallan 25 detonating into amber rain and crystal shrapnel. He moved before the second shot fired, faster than a man in a 3-piece suit had any right to move, his hand clamping around my collar and yanking me over the bar counter. I hit the floor hard, whiskey-soaked wood slamming into my ribs as the world above me erupted into chaos. Screaming. High-pitched and primal. Chairs screeched against hardwood. More gunfire, sharp pops that my brain kept trying to mistake for champagne corks. Bottles shattered. Someone's drink cart tipped over, glass cascading like a waterfall of broken promises. Stay down. Minjun's voice was steel cold as he pressed me flat against the rubber floor mat. Across the room, I caught a flash of burgundy coat. Sharon. She dove behind a leather booth just as a bullet punched through the cushion where her head had been, white stuffing exploding like snow. The 2 door guards were moving in, weapons drawn. The man at the back wall fired again, wood splintered from the bar edge inches from my face. Minjun's hand was on my shoulder, his visible eye locked onto mine with an intensity that burned. Why are you helping me? My throat was dry. My hands were shaking. But the answer came out clear. Because she planned to kill everyone in here. Something shifted in his expression. Not gratitude. Not relief. Just calculation, a predator deciding whether I was prey or pack. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a matte black Glock, and pressed it into my trembling hands. Then you don't work for me, he said. You fight with me. The weight of the gun felt obscene. I'd never held one before. Never wanted to. I can't. You can. He rose to a crouch, scanning the chaos above the bar. Or you die. Sharon was pinned behind the booth, barely visible through the forest of overturned tables and panicking guests. One of the door guards was closing in on her position, weapon raised. Min-jun moved. Fluid. Lethal. He vaulted the bar counter and fired twice, both shots finding their target. The guard dropped. I forced myself up, gun heavy in both hands, heart hammering so hard I thought my ribs might crack. The man at the back wall saw me, swung his aim. I pulled the trigger. The recoil nearly knocked me backward. The shot went wide, punching into the exposed brick, but it was enough. He ducked. Sharon bolted from behind the booth, sprinting low toward us. Move. Min-jun barked, covering her approach with 3 precise shots that kept the second door guard pinned. She slid behind the bar beside me, breathing hard, mascara streaked. We need to get out of here. Back exit, Min-jun cut her off, already moving. Now. We ran, hunched and stumbling as gunfire chased us through the service hallway. Behind us, I heard Yura's voice cutting through the chaos, sharp commands in Korean, barked into her phone or a comm device. The heavy steel door to the alley loomed ahead. Min-jun hit it with his shoulder, and we spilled into the freezing Chicago night. He stopped. Turned. His eye found mine. This was never about me, he said quietly, breath misting in the cold. Someone much bigger wants me gone. The alley reeked of wet asphalt and rotting garbage. Steam rising from a grate like the city was exhaling ghosts. We ran. Sharon stumbled over a pothole, and I caught her arm, pulling her forward as shouting erupted behind us. Korean and English overlapping, the words blurred, but the intent crystal clear. They were coming. Min-jun moved ahead of us, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid-fire Korean as he scanned the narrow space between buildings. The alley dead-ended at a chain-link fence 30 yards out. We were trapped. They're blocking the street, Sharon gasped, her voice raw. We can't. Headlights blazed at the alley entrance. A black Mercedes sedan, sleek and silent, pulled in so smoothly it felt choreographed. The back door swung open before it even stopped. Get in. Min-jun's voice left no room for argument. We dove into the leather interior, Sharon first, then me. Min-jun slid in last, pulling the door shut as the driver, a stone-faced man in a dark suit, accelerated hard. The car fishtailed, tires screaming, and we shot back onto the street just as Yura's men spilled into the alley behind us. The Mercedes wove through Chicago's late-night traffic like water through cracks. Min-jun didn't look back. His eye was fixed on us, cold and calculating. Talk, he said. Everything you heard. Now. Sharon's hands were shaking. She'd tucked them under her arms, trying to hide it, but I could see the tremor in her shoulders. We were in the wine storage, she started, voice steadier than I expected. She was on the phone. Speaking Italian first, then Korean, then something else. Russian, maybe? What did she say? 2 men at the door. 1 at the back. She told someone you'd be at the bar. Sharon swallowed hard. She said they'd have a clean shot. No witnesses. Min-jun's jaw flexed. What else? She switched languages every few sentences, I added. Like she was trying to stay off anyone's radar. But she kept coming back to the timing. The position. The signal. The signal, Min-jun repeated, almost to himself. He leaned back, one hand pressed against his temple. Yura doesn't have the reach to organize this. She's smart, yes. Ruthless, maybe. But she doesn't have the power to mobilize a coordinated hit. Then who does? Sharon asked. Someone is backing her. His voice dropped, colder now. Someone who wants me out of the picture badly enough to use her as the knife. The car turned onto a quieter street, buildings giving way to warehouses and industrial sprawl. My pulse was still hammering, adrenaline burning through my veins like acid. Why would she do it? I asked. If she doesn't have the power herself. Because she was promised something. Minjun's eye locked onto mine. Or someone. Before I could respond, his phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen, and something in his expression changed. Not fear. Something worse. Recognition. He answered without a word, lifting the phone to his ear. Silence. Long enough that I thought the call might have dropped. Then Minjun spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. My brother. Minjun didn't say another word into the phone. Just listened, his face carved from granite, that single visible eye growing darker with each passing second. Then he ended the call. The silence in the car felt suffocating. Your brother? Sharon finally asked, her voice small. Park Min-jae. Minjun's tone was flat, drained of emotion. My older brother. He died 3 years ago in Busan. Car accident off a coastal road. He paused. Or that's what we were meant to believe. The Mercedes turned into an underground parking garage, descending in tight spirals until we reached a level marked only with a single red stripe. The driver pulled into a space near a reinforced steel door, killed the engine, and waited. Minjun stared straight ahead, jaw working. Min-jae didn't die. He disappeared. And while I've been running the family operations in Chicago, he's been building something else. Something bigger. He turned to face us. He's aligned himself with the Volkov-Bratva Russian organized crime. They want a foothold in the Korean syndicate's infrastructure. Min-jae wants the power I have. And Yura? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Was never mine. His voice was cold steel. She was his from the beginning. A double agent. Feeding him information, positioning herself close enough to put a bullet in my head when the time came. Sharon's breath hitched. Tonight. Tonight wasn't an assassination, Minjun said. It was a declaration of war. We followed him through the steel door, down a narrow corridor lit by industrial fluorescence, and into what could only be described as a fortress disguised as a penthouse. High ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline, but every surface was reinforced. Bulletproof glass. Reinforced walls. Security cameras in every corner. A safe house. Minjun poured himself a drink from a crystal decanter, downed it in one motion, then turned to face us. You understand what you are now, don't you? His eye moved between Sharon and me. You're witnesses. You heard Yura give the order. You saw the hit unfold. You helped me survive. My stomach dropped. We're loose ends, I said quietly. In a war between 2 crime families? Minjun set the glass down with a soft clink. You're not just loose ends. You're liabilities. To Min-jae, to Yura, to anyone who wants to use tonight against me. Sharon stood, her hands clenched into fists. So what are you saying? That we're targets now too? I'm saying you have 2 choices. Minjun's voice was calm, almost gentle. You walk out that door, go back to your lives, and hope Min-jae's people don't find you before dawn. Or, I prompted, though I dreaded the answer. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something almost human in his expression. Not kindness, not mercy, but something close to respect. You 2 don't go home now, he said quietly. You're staying with me. Your people think we're part of this. I said it before Minjun could spin whatever deal he was about to offer. His expression didn't change, but the silence that followed told me I was right. Some of them do, he admitted. 2 bartenders who just happened to overhear a hit, just happened to warn me, just happened to survive. He shrugged. It looks convenient. Orchestrated. We saved your life, Sharon said, her voice sharp with exhaustion and fear. Which is why you're here and not in the river. Minjun crossed to the window, hands clasped behind his back. But trust in my world isn't given freely. It's earned in blood. Sharon stood abruptly, the color draining from her face. I didn't sign up for this. I left this life, she caught herself, but too late. Minjun turned slowly. Left what life? She wrapped her arms around herself, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. My father ran with the Irish mob in Boston. Small-time enforcement, collections. I watched it destroy him, destroy my mother. Her voice cracked. I came to Chicago to disappear. To be normal. Pour drinks, go home, live quietly. There's no such thing as quietly, Minjun said. Not anymore. Not for you. I felt the walls closing in. The penthouse suddenly felt less like a sanctuary and more like a gilded cage. What do you want from us? I asked. Cooperation. You stay here, under my protection. You tell me everything you remember, every word Yura said, every detail, every language she used. In exchange, I keep you alive. And if we refuse? Minjun's I found mine. Then you leave, and I give you a 12-hour head start before I tell my brother's people exactly where to find you. Before I could respond, the window behind Minjun spiderwebbed with cracks. The sound came after a sharp crack echoing from somewhere across the skyline. Down. Minjun barked, diving away from the glass. Sharon hit the floor. I dropped beside her, heart hammering. Another shot punched through the reinforced glass, embedding in the far wall. Sniper, Minjun hissed, crawling toward a steel cabinet. Min-jae's moving faster than I thought. I scanned the windows, the dark buildings opposite. There, a glint of metal on a rooftop 4 buildings over, barely visible against the night sky. There. I pointed. Northwest corner, white building with the water tower. Minjun followed my line of sight, then moved with surgical precision. He pulled a rifle from the cabinet, sighted through the scope, and fired 3 times in rapid succession. The glint disappeared. He lowered the weapon, breathing hard, and looked at me with something close to surprise. Good eyes. I nodded, still shaking. Bartender thing. You learned to spot trouble. For the first time, something like respect flickered across his face. Maybe you two are worth keeping alive after all. Sharon had moved to a desk near the far wall, rifling through papers scattered across the surface. She froze, her hand hovering over a document. Michael. Her voice was barely a whisper. You need to see this. I crossed to her, Minjun close behind. It was a blueprint. Building schematics. Marked with red circles and timestamps. What is it? Minjun demanded. Sharon's hands trembled as she held it up. Yura's planning another attack, she said. And this time, it's not just you. Minjun spread the blueprint across the desk, his finger tracing the red circles like he was reading a death sentence. The Drake Hotel. Tomorrow night. His voice was cold calculation. Min-jae is hosting what he's calling a unity summit. Representatives from every major family, Korean, Russian, Italian. He's positioning himself as a peacemaker, a bridge between old power and new. But it's really a power grab, I said. Exactly. Minjun tapped the largest red circle, a ballroom on the 3rd floor. He wants to consolidate support, show the families that he's the future. That I'm the past. Sharon studied the blueprint, her bartender's eye catching what I'd missed. These timestamps. They're not random. Minjun nodded grimly. Yura will be there. Not as my fiancé anymore, as Min-jae's lieutenant. And according to this, he gestured to notes scrawled in Korean along the margin. She's planning to make a statement. What kind of statement? I asked, though my gut already knew. The kind that ends with bodies on the floor. The room fell silent except for the hum of the building's ventilation. Outside, Chicago stretched dark and glittering, oblivious to the war being waged in its shadows. So we stop her, Sharon said quietly. We confront her, Minjun corrected. Publicly. In front of every family representative. Force Min-jae to either back her play or disavow her. Either way, we fracture his alliance. How? I asked. Minjun's eye locked onto mine. You walk in as my informant. The bartender who saved my life, who has information about the Volkov-Bratva's operations in Chicago. You'll have credibility, you're a civilian, an outsider. My throat went dry. And Sharon. Intermediary. She arranges the meeting, vouches for you. It gives us cover to move through the event without raising immediate alarm. Sharon's jaw tightened. This is insane. We're walking into a room full of criminals. You're walking in under my protection, Minjun said, with my people positioned throughout the hotel. But yes, it's dangerous. He paused, something almost like regret crossing his features. It's also the only move we have. I felt the weight of the gun he'd given me earlier, still tucked in my waistband. I'd never wanted to hold a weapon. Never imagined I'd be standing in a mafia safe house planning an infiltration. But Sharon was right when she'd said it in the bar. If we didn't act, everyone died. What if something goes wrong? I asked. Minjun moved closer, close enough that I could see the scar tissue around his eye patch, the lines of violence written into his skin. When he spoke, his voice carried a strange mixture of respect and warning. I've watched you tonight, Michael. You think fast. You don't freeze. That's rare. He glanced at Sharon. Both of you have something most people in my world lost a long time ago, conscience. It makes you unpredictable. Useful. That's not an answer, Sharon said. Minjun reached into his jacket, pulled out a compact pistol, and set it on the desk in front of me. If anything goes wrong, he said quietly, his eye never leaving mine, shoot Yura first. The Drake Hotel's grand ballroom dripped with wealth and danger in equal measure. Crystal chandeliers threw fractured light across faces I recognized from news reports, men and women whose names appeared in federal investigations, whose empires were built on blood and silence. They wore Armani and Dior-like armor, champagne flutes held with the same casual grace as concealed weapons. I moved through the crowd like a ghost, trying not to look at any of them too long. The tuxedo Minjun had provided felt too tight across my shoulders, the bow tie strangling me with every breath. Sharon stood near the bar, ironic, really, in a black evening gown that made her look like she belonged in this world. She was talking to two men in dark suits, security officers, her smile easy and practiced, distracting them while I worked. The envelope felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in my jacket pocket. Evidence. Financial records linking Yura to offshore accounts tied to the Volkov Bratva. Phone records showing calls between her and Min Jae dating back 18 months. All of it compiled by Minjun's people, all of it damning. I spotted the marble column near the stage where Minjun had told me to plant it. Casual. Natural. I drifted toward it, slipping the envelope behind a decorative vase on a side table, exactly where his people could discover it at the right moment. Ladies and gentlemen. Min Jae's voice cut through the ambient noise like a blade. He stood on the stage, tall and handsome, looking almost identical to his brother except for the absence of scars, the presence of both eyes. His smile was warm, welcoming, predatory. Tonight, we celebrate unity. A new era of cooperation among brother. Minjun's voice rang out from the ballroom entrance. The room went silent. Every head turned. Minjun walked forward, flanked by two of his men, his single eye fixed on the stage. On Yura, who stood beside Min Jae in a crimson dress that looked like spilled blood. How dramatic, Yura said, her voice carrying across the stillness. Did you miss me already, darling? I'm here for the truth, Minjun said, stopping 10 feet from the stage. You want to tell them, or should I? Her smile didn't waver. Tell them what? That you're paranoid? Desperate? That you've been working for my brother since the day we met? That you ordered my assassination 2 nights ago? That you're a traitor? The room erupted in whispers. Min Jae raised a hand, his expression carefully neutral. These are serious accusations. Backed by evidence, Minjun cut him off. He gestured toward the column. Check the table. East side. Red envelope. One of Min Jae's men moved to retrieve it. Yura's eyes tracked him, and for a split second, her mask cracked. You'll die before you reach the door, she hissed at Minjun. Everything happened at once. Men in dark suits materialized from the shadows, Min Jae's ambush. Minjun's hidden team countered from the opposite side, gunfire erupting like thunder. Guests screamed, diving for cover. Tables overturned. Glass shattered. The chandelier swung violently as bullets punched through its crystal. I ducked behind a column, pulling the pistol from my jacket. Sharon was moving toward me. until Yura grabbed her from behind, arm locked around her throat, gun pressed against her temple. Nobody moves. Yura screamed. Time fractured into a single, impossible moment. Sharon's eyes found mine across the chaos, wide, terrified, pleading. Yura's finger tightened on the trigger. Minjun's words echoed in my head. If anything goes wrong, shoot Yura first. I raised the pistol. My hands weren't shaking anymore. The world narrowed to a single point of focus. Yura's shoulder, just above Sharon's head. Close. Too close. I pulled the trigger. The shot cracked through the ballroom. Yura jerked backward, the gun falling from her hand as she collapsed. Sharon stumbled forward, gasping, alive. But Yura's fall revealed something worse. Behind her, beneath the stage, red LED numbers counted down. 047. 046. 045. Bomb, someone screamed. The ballroom erupted into pure chaos. Crime bosses and bodyguards scrambled for exits, trampling each other in designer shoes. Minjun moved like lightning, grabbing Sharon and shoving her toward me. Get her out. Back exit now. I caught Sharon's arm, pulling her through the panicking crowd. Behind us, gunfire still cracked, Minjun's men and Min Jae's locked in close combat between overturned tables and shattered glass. We burst through a service door into a narrow hallway. Sharon was breathing hard, her hand pressed against her throat where Yura had held her. Michael, Minjun. I know. I turned back toward the ballroom just as Minjun appeared in the doorway, Min Jae right behind him. The brothers faced each other, weapons raised, identical faces twisted into mirror images of rage and betrayal. You always were weak, Min Jae snarled. Sentimental. That's why you'll never survive this world. And you were always a coward, Minjun replied. Hiding behind proxies and bombs instead of facing me yourself. The timer hit 020. Minjun's finger moved toward the trigger, then stopped. Hesitated. Brothers, I realized. Even now, even after everything, he couldn't do it. But I could. I grabbed Minjun's arm and yanked him backward through the doorway just as Min Jae dove toward the stage. Move. I screamed. We ran. The three of us, sprinting down the hallway as the world behind us turned to fire. The explosion was a physical force, a wave of heat and sound that threw us to the ground. My ears rang. Smoke filled the corridor, alarms shrieking. When I looked back, the ballroom entrance was a gaping wound of twisted metal and flame. Min Jae was gone. The police arrived within minutes, sirens wailing, followed by black SUVs from rival factions circling like vultures. Minjun led us through a service tunnel, out into an alley where his driver waited. He turned to face us, soot-stained and bleeding from a cut above his eyebrow, but alive. You saved my life, he said quietly. Twice. 3 times, Sharon corrected, voice hoarse. If you're counting the bar. Something almost like a smile crossed his face. 3 times. He reached into his jacket, pulled out 2 passports and a thick envelope. New identities. Clean papers. Enough money to disappear if you want to. I stared at the documents. We're free. You were never mine to keep. Minjun's I moved between us. You're witnesses, yes. But you're also the reason I'm still breathing. That counts for something in my world. Sharon took the envelope with trembling hands. The war isn't over, Minjun finished. Min Jae built alliances, made promises. If he survived, and men like him have a habit of surviving, he'll regroup. And when he does, he didn't finish. Didn't need to. I felt it then, the weight of what we'd become. I'd walked into that bar 2 nights ago as Michael Harris, bartender, nobody. Now I stood in a smoke-filled alley, gun still in my pocket, blood on my hands, forever changed. Sharon's hand found my arm, gripping tight enough to hurt. Minjun climbed into the car, paused at the door. If my brother survived, he said quietly, his visible eye locking onto mine one last time, he'll come for all of us. Stay ready. The car door closed. The Mercedes disappeared into Chicago's pre-dawn darkness. Sharon and I stood there, shaken but unbroken, watching the smoke rise from the Drake Hotel against the lightning sky. The war wasn't over, but we were still standing. If you enjoyed this story, click subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where you have watched from. Your support helps us bring more thrilling stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss them.